after you've not been open for 2 months?
Yeah, you know, I guess personally, I'm doing okay, and
Yeah.
as a leader, that's important because you've got to be looking after your own, health and well-being, um, because you often
Mm.
are guilty of taking on the stresses of everyone else. Um,
So, Chief Operating Officer, Sudima Hotels, you've got a pretty big footprint that's heavily reliant on tourism. How do you see this kicking back off, coming down from level two potentially to what one would look like from a domestic side, and then eventually, hopefully, getting the international world back rolling? Like, how do you kind of see this play out in your head, say, for the next, say, 6 to 12 months for New Zealand?
well, it's complex, of course, and very uncertain. But I believe the next uh, yeah, I believe it'll just be in stages. The first couple of months will be slow, and hopefully, momentum will grow. Um, so yeah, it's really hard to know for sure, Robert, but um, I think it'll come back in parts.
Yeah, and have you seen, like, so when this was all went down, did you obviously, you stayed at home in the lockdown, like logistically, how did things all space out with, like, where everyone went and what everyone did? How did it all work logistically for over the last couple of months?
Actually, it's been difficult because we're an operational company. So although the support office, or people would refer to head office, um, although we were able to work from home, it was really frustrating because we're an operational company, so 99% of our people are working in hotels, and so it was a real struggle to sort of have empathy, I guess, because
Mm.
um, I felt the pain of the people that worked for me. Yeah,
Yeah,
in our cases, Robert, we had three hotels were at the front line of the health crisis, and we had people who, were coming into hotels that uh, sent there by the government, potentially had infections, and we were asking our people to put themselves in front of them. And
yeah,
of course, we had all this health and safety precautions, of course. There was one period where I'd said to the government, unless I got some answers around health and safety, I would withdraw our hotels from the offer because we had volunteered them. But
yeah.
that was where my real concern and stress was that these people were going about their business and potentially putting themselves at risk. So yeah, that was difficult. And then, of course, in parallel to that whole crisis, we still were seeing revenues fall away, and some of the hotels it was down to zero. So we had to go about a restructure. So you had the sort of, two things happening at once, where you were um, trying to support your people in the front line, but equally going about plans to, potentially remove their job. So it was terrible, just shocking.
Yeah, it's a tough one to balance when you're thinking about the care of the business versus the care of others when it's
Yeah, yeah,
simultaneous. And that's a tough one, right? Because then personally, you're like, you want you to be safe, you want your staff to be safe, and simultaneous it's like, well, we're also, seeing a flipping 90+% drop in the entire business's revenue. How do we navigate both sides of that? So yeah, especially with tourism accommodation, it's something that we've had John Maynard on from the head of Wilderness, James Dalgleish from Go, we had Tim Elk from Juicy, and I've obviously talked to a bunch of people in the tourism space, and it's just kind of I think New Zealand very much, the hearts go out to all of. I think they've really had a bit more of appreciation for the tourism sector through this, right? Like a lot of times, and it's kind of like genuine care for those that sit within it, like just seeing so much of the industry. When this was all going down for you, were you in kind of constant comms with others, competitors in the marketplace, with like how did that sort of upper echelon of tourism, the tourism sort of operators and stuff, like what was kind of the feedback and the thinking and the communication over the last couple of months? Like, where did the energy sort of go to with those conversations?
yeah, it's a really interesting question, actually, because um, immediately, I mean, especially in the hotel sector, we're a pretty tight group.
Mm.
Um, it's not unusual for us to be working for competitors through our career because we're a small market. So we all get on pretty well, and we all have each other's backs. And I think in the wider tourism sector, that's probably the case too. Um, and initially, in that first week or two, there was just shock. And, I was reaching out to colleagues and peers, and they were doing the same to me. And we were just sort of shaking our heads about, what next. But that didn't last for too long, because I guess we all had to go back to our knitting and just say, right, we've got to get on and do what we've got to do. Then I guess once that first sort of 3 or 4 weeks went out of the way, and some of I guess the leaders in the industry were able to sort of pop their heads up a little bit, we began to ask questions of the government response, and what was next. And so that probably sparked a different round of discussions amongst us all. But we're all very connected, and we all get it. So there was a lot of emphasis on trying to get information back to the government or to our tourism representatives to try and express what we thought should happen next. And now we've probably, Robert, moved on to another phase where I guess the reality's really set in. We've kind of realised that the government has done as much as they can for us, and it's really up to ourselves. So I think what's happening now is there's a little bit of reflection really going on, and it'll be interesting to see what's next for the tourism industry in terms of specifically what you ask about, what discussions are going to take place internally.
Has there been how much talk of roll-ups and acquisitions and international VC firms and New Zealand competitors jumping together? Like how much sort of higher level conversations have been had with what's actually going to be needed? Because obviously, government help gets through days, but not years, and different current competitors in the market. Is there any tension is there any fear from New Zealand owned operators that if they don't partner with each other, overseas capital might come in and actually take that? Like, is that a kind of concern that is being had at the top table, or is it kind of more how do we survive and go? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I don't. We've always tried to encourage foreign capital, ironically, because the government, a series of governments had wanted foreign investment, especially around hotels, because there had previously been a shortage of inventory. Although we didn't always see it that way, but certainly the government felt that there was a need. So there's a lot of capital coming to New Zealand. There's a lot of hotels under development in Auckland. Thousands and thousands of rooms due to come online. I would assume, though, that the appetite for investment in New Zealand at the moment, like anywhere in the world, around tourism would be moderate. I don't think there'd be a great deal of demand at the moment because people are still taking stock. However, of course, there will be opportunities. I think in the next 6 to 12 months, some operators, and everyone's different, their financial situation might mean that they're slightly exposed to potential takeovers, or are forced to selling off assets. Who knows? But I guess that's a real possibility that there may well be investors who are waiting and looking for this type of opportunity. I'm not aware of those discussions at the moment, Rob, because it really comes down to valuations and especially in the hotel market, what that future looks like. There was certainly a feeling pre-COVID that Auckland particularly had kind of filled up in terms of investments for hotels. So I don't think that there would be much of an appetite at that point. But who knows, I guess.
Yeah, no, I always think about, someone make a move, then what's that chess piece down? And I was like, well, if a bunch of New Zealand, these tourism spots get, distressed assets, overseas comes in, and potentially if there's a couple of kind of well-loved Kiwi brands who now get taken offshore, will there then be blowback on the government for not doing more for the tourism sector now when they could have to potentially have saved those things? And I'm just like, this isn't a now thing, but I'm just like, if this played out in certain ways, if there's big beloved brands that we had, would that be an issue or not? One of the things I was going to ask you about is, when this happened, everyone kind of went, you're exactly right, Les, everyone went into shock and it was like, holy shit, like this is stuffed, right? And then it was just like, what's happening, blah, blah, and it became a bit of a gong show. But then everyone, it kind of, the energy turned a little and was like, how can we reimagine the future? How can we reinvent ourselves? How can we reframe the conversation? How can we reset the business? Lots of re's, I get that. And you'd put a post up, which was flipping gold. And it was along the lines, I think I got it here, you were saying, I'm imagining the reimagined tourism catchphrase. I'm sorry. I'm approaching the reimagined tourism catchphrase with caution. Suddenly, we have parties not engaged in tourism activities, advising on what's best. And you kind of went on this rant and just like destroyed all these Muppets, which was rad. Give the context behind that, because a lot of people, it's very easy to sit on the sofas and be the couch backseat driver going on. What didn't the average person realize when they could just so happily, flippantly just like tell you how to run your world? Because I just thought it was great.
Yeah, I guess like all tourism people, I got a bit defensive. I thought our industry was headed in a pretty good direction pre-COVID, especially around some of the critical factors like sustainability and care of the environment, manaakitanga. I feel that if there's a sector in New Zealand that really understands that, that's us, because the reputation of our brand is what makes us successful. So we're really keen to be guardians of that. And I know that over the years, tourism has had a sort of a mixed journey around volume versus quality. But in recent years, we've really changed our focus. And this has been led by tourism industry Aotearoa and the governments. I think we've done a great job sort of focusing where we need to go. We had some choke points but not failures. And that's what really upsets me, is that people were using the term like over tourism because they'd seen it on Twitter or they heard it from overseas. And I don't think we were experiencing that. We had choke points. We had some bits of infrastructure that weren't up to standard. And so I don't think we were in a space where things were failing. And that's what really upset me. And then now, of course, suddenly we have all these people from the sidelines telling us about how we should go about
do your thing,
doing our thing. And I think we kind of get it. We're a very aware industry. We understand all those pressures, and there are a lot of very clever people who work in this industry, and they get it. And partly, Robert, that's because we have a lot of young people too. I mean, tourism attracts young people, and they're very passionate about these things, so they drive us. So to suddenly have people outside the industry, academics, and the like, telling us about how we should proceed in this sort of imaginary perfect world. Because the simple thing, first of all, is we've got to survive. We've got to get through this. But look, no question, we will take on board all those comments and all those observations, because we're having similar thoughts ourselves. We absolutely appreciate that as an opportunity to reset some things. But we still need volume. We can't have every tourist arriving in New Zealand who was going on a slow and thoughtful tourism journey. That's just not practical. We need a mix. And yes, we'd love to have, well-heeled people coming through, but we also got to be able to provide a welcome and service and products for a whole range of people. I guess there was a little frustration there around that. And
no, it was great. It was great. It just kind of threw the hammer, because it just kind of, I don't know, it was about, maybe it was like week 2 or 3. Everyone was just throwing shit out. Like, it was just got ideas, but because there was no sort of comeback, there was this kind of weird tension of like, I want everyone to have a voice because it's good that we have ideas, but at the same time, you're not playing this game, so shut your face. So it was quite, man, you finished off perfect. You go, my message therefore to the groups in the stands is, while we appreciate you paying for a ticket to the game, the reason you are not playing today is the talent is on the field. Stand back and let the battle-hardened men and women in this industry play what's in front of them. And it was just, it was like a moment, because it just kind of stopped and be like, all right, yes, but you don't see what we see because you haven't been here before, so you don't actually we appreciate the intent, but you haven't executed anything to actually have the right for that opinion. So it's just great.
I have seen lots of comments, especially from New Zealanders, about how tourism is so expensive in New Zealand, and now we're getting our comeuppance, and that it's unaffordable for locals, and we've been greedy, and those sort of comments too upset me. The fact is that domestic tourists spent something like 25, $27 billion last year in our economy. So it was obviously working.
Mm.
And what's
Yeah.
happened is what you were saying is suddenly we've got these commentators from the sidelines who are getting a voice. But actually, even domestically, we were going along okay. So yeah, some of that criticism has been hard to take, but I guess we've just got to be, again, be aware of those things, be mindful of the local market, but at the same time, we've got to be brave and plough on and continue to innovate and build quality.
In the next 3 years, what are you most fearful of for the tourism industry in New Zealand?
Yes, I did get it. It's a good question. The risk is that as things recover, that we become too optimistic too soon. It's
Mm.
important in a business that you continue to plan for the worst and hope for the best, because there might be the odd false dawn. A recovery is not a straight line, as you know.
Mm.
Um, it it is always stepped, and there'll be the odd disruption and odd setback, because we still face a health crisis around the world, and you never quite know what's coming or what, and we know there'll be something else occurs, financial or health wise. So that's probably the best thing, is you just got to remain cautious. And the challenge is obviously getting to a point where you can build up your cash reserves again,
Mm.
and um, and get yourself into a safer spot. And of course, by doing that, you're naturally cautious. So that's another risk, is that especially in tourism, because we've always been good innovators and we've always been good risk takers. But if you become cautious, potentially, we don't take the most of opportunities. And the third thing, Robert, and this is what happened to us post GFC, is that the recovery came and it was a wave of tourism, and we
Yeah.
just weren't ready for it. We didn't see it coming. Um, and that always happens sort of post any type of recession. The recovery is always stronger than you think, and so the danger is that you're so conservative, you've modelled your business to be cautious, and then suddenly we just get these people and we miss the opportunity. We can't maximise that
Mm.
chance. So I mean, all three of those things will happen.
Yeah.
And what happened post GFC especially is that we didn't address some of that infrastructure. We when New Zealand population began to grow quickly and tourism came in, we had all sorts of problems, because we didn't take that period post GFC to get on with those big projects. So,
Mm.
what we want to see the government doing now is quickly deploying resources into those well thought out resources and well thought out projects. But we need to take this chance to address those things,
It's a
because that
tough
would be
balance. Yeah, no. I was just going to say it's a really tough balance of offense versus defense, because from some of the people I've been talking to, they're talking about, after the Great Depression of 27 or whatever it was, that whole generation grew up in defense mode to save your pennies, and you never know, because that that kind of shifted the mindset and the psyche of how they thought money and finance. Obviously, GFC was, I guess, the most recent one for. I mean, I'm only 35 now, so I remember that. Do you think that this moment will again change the psyche of New Zealanders in general, deep to its core, with how they view money, offense, defense, in terms of being a bit more proactive and maybe a bit more risk averse with how they sort of approach life and business?
Yeah, I mean, I would hope so, because we do know New Zealanders hold a lot of household debt, for instance. It would be great to see that come down as a country and potentially save more money. I mean, that would be good. But there'll be lessons learned, and people of your generation who haven't been necessarily through a major setback, you'll be all better for it. You'll be much stronger leaders coming out of this, because now that when you're
Mm.
operating especially a large business in the future, you're going to be saying, well, let's be cautious. We have to remember the COVID period.
Yep.
So yeah, there'll be really good lessons in that regard. And yes, I guess people will be a little more conservative. Um, and yeah, maybe that's not a bad thing.
So do you think it might, because it feels, with a lot of people, so we had Clive Omerod on, who's the CEO of Les Mills, and, he said, look, this didn't change the strategy one iota from what we were going to do, but it escalated it from 3 years to 3 weeks. And so it was very offense, you know. So there's been kind of there's been two camps. It's been handbrakes on defense, you know, batten down the hatches, holy shit. And then the other part has been, let's fully giddy up and go. So I think you're probably right. The long tail of that new leadership is probably going to be on defense, but right now it feels it's offensive with opportunity, right? Do you kind of feel that's the sense of where most of the decision makers' heads are at?
Yeah, I mean, good businesses are planning for all types of scenarios. Um, you need to have an eye on the future. Certainly in our own case, yes, we went through that survival period for a month or two where we asked ourselves, will we get through this? We quickly determined that we would. And then we looked about, okay, well, what's the short term look like? What's the next 12 months going to look like? We needed to restructure our company in order to get through that period. But equally, we were in growth mode pre-COVID. We've got 3 hotels under development, and for a small company like ourselves, to have 3 more coming on is a big deal. So that hasn't changed that. I mean, because those investments are long term. Our shareholders have a long term view. Often they're generational investors. So no, we set about doing that. But I absolutely take the point that there may have been some things in the background that have suddenly been brought forward. Technology is one of those things. We, like all companies, we were considering, we deploy all types of technology, but we also consider lots of technology, and it really brought that forward. Those things now just have to happen because we need, obviously, a contactless experience in terms of technology right through our hotels, but equally we need to be more productive. And we've always wanted to be more productive, like any business, but you're right. But suddenly, we just have to. And, which kind of leads me into the fact that, we will rebuild the company slightly differently going forward. We won't be the same. We need to look at ways of being, more productive.
Yeah, I was gonna. So when you think about that, what's been the biggest anchor that slowed down tourism businesses when it comes to technology? What's been the one thing that you're just like, this shit has got to stop? Like, what's the bit that you are trying to attack? What's the first on your hit list for getting tech to try and go after to make business better?
I don't know that there's been anything necessarily slowing us down, Rob. I guess, we're like anybody where there is so many good ideas coming out every day. And just when you go through the process of looking at, a solution and you think, wow, this is fantastic, something else comes along and does even more. And then you take a moment to reset. And if you continue to do that, you get nothing done. So probably my frustration at the moment is that, we've been a little bit slow to get some of the simple things done because we've been always thinking, oh, there's something so much better in the background. So I want to see that change. I want to sort of get back to let's get the basics correct and get that technology correct, and then let's worry about the bells and whistles later.
Yep.
And I know you're a very tech savvy person, and you'll appreciate this. It's no sooner when you think you found a solution and something's on the horizon that looks much better. So, and the bigger the organisation, the slower it is to install it, and then you get it done, and then suddenly something else comes along. So it's just a living, breathing thing. But I don't know that particularly there's anything been holding us back. We're pretty good with technology. I mean, we have learned over the years not to be the first. It's better to be the second. That's probably the biggest lesson we've learned. But now I'm keen to get some of that technology deployed. But, and this is really vital in our sector, it's got to be guest friendly. It's got to be something the guest wants. I think we're often guilty of imposing technology or even ideas on guests without really researching what their needs are. So I think we've got to be reactive to them. And the other, because the complicated thing about tourism too is that we have a whole range of ages, from 18 to 88. So you've got to be mindful that it's got to be cool for everyone.
Yeah, so on that, right? Like we had Olivia on, who's the CEO of Startup Queenstown, and she was talking about, what do you do with Queenstown? Obviously, it's basically at zero at the moment, and the idea is how do you turn it into like essentially like a tourism tech hub, or like the home of tourism tech for New Zealand or the world or whatever. How do you think, just Queenstown in general, how do you think, if you're the mayor of Queenstown, how would you address trying to repivot what Queenstown could potentially offer a local market, or just to do anything, anyhow, whatever, to try and breathe life back into a place that was so predominantly and globally well known for something which it technically can't trade on right now?
It's a tough one for me, Robert. You're asking a waiter. You know, I yeah, I do. I mean, I know Queenstown reasonably
No,
well.
I think about it though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, go for it.
I lived there for 8 years, and I travel regularly to Queenstown because we're building a hotel there. And I know it well. It's I guess as long as in terms of IT, as long as all the technology and the pipelines are strong, it's possible, and it's a beautiful place to live. And I can see people, the Silicon Valley type of people wanting to live there, and I understand a lot of people do at the very top end. Mm-hmm. There's probably no reason why that can't occur. But in terms of breathing life back into the tourism industry itself, it's just going to be a real struggle. And unfortunately, they just have to be patient. I'm you've probably touched on a nerve there. I'm a little frustrated, and it's a bit of a controversial view. That's why I put on LinkedIn, but I'm particularly frustrated at the way we're treating visa holders and immigrants in Queenstown.
Okay, go there. Go there. What's the? I didn't see that rant. What's that one?
Well,
I should have didn't come across my desk. What's the deal?
In Queenstown, for as long as I can remember, I've been attached to Queenstown in employment since the late 90s. We've always had a shortage of employment. We've struggled to attract Kiwis because it's an expensive place to live. And the kind of the saying in Queenstown is that there's no unemployment. Because people turn over very quickly. So we've been desperate to attract overseas people who are prepared to stay there for longer periods. People in the UK and Europe, and more recent years, people from South America. And so we were finally getting to that point where we had a good sort of steady workforce that we could call upon. Many of those
without the churn as much.
Without the churn, that's right. And people who were determined to make it their home. And, they put up with really tough conditions. There's a lot of rat bag rental property.
Drunk snowboarders at Fergburger. That's what it is. It's my kind at Fergburger.
Yeah. I mean, I've picked a few of you guys up at 4:00 in the morning, it's a difficult place, as you know, and it's expensive to live there. The work is seasonality, but it's fun. And that's why people go there. So I guess my point is that we've been desperate to get them there. We're still in a high season, understaffed. And now, of course, during the crisis, we've said to them, well, you're on your own. And, I mean, I understand the Kiwi first approach. We've got to do that. But we're in danger of abandoning them. And many of them are in really difficult financial situations. They're stuck. They can't come and they can't go. And I just think we need to be doing more, and Jim Bolt has called for this, to assist them. Because the worry for me is that in 18 months' time, especially when we open our own hotel and other businesses get back up and running, we'll have this shortage of staff again, and we won't be able to attract Kiwis back then because the fundamental issues still exist. It's still an expensive place. It's still remote. And we won't be able to grow because we're hamstrung by employment. I mean, that's been in place for a while. So, look, I don't know what the solution is, but it's just frustrating to see us, somewhat abandon these people. And, from a humanitarian point of view, it worries me. And Robert, I believe that if you cross the border and come into New Zealand, you're welcome. And we should kind of treat you like we do any visitor or any Kiwi. We should extend care to you. To suddenly say to you, look, we don't need you, good luck. And leave you in desperate situations. I don't think that's cool.
Yeah, and just technically, I'm not an immigration expert, but I'm imagining their visas are tied to a single business, right? And they or can they work in other sort of spots? Are you saying do we get like a 2-3 year extension for those that have that to be able to work elsewhere in New Zealand? Like what's the bit that the handbrake legally that's
there there are some legalities around that, and I'm not fully across that. But yes, I don't know about extensions, but certainly if there's flexibility. Now, I understand there has been some flexibility offered, but whether it's flexible enough, I guess, is the question.
Got it.
And but look, those people will struggle because it's not like they can go to another region and get work potentially because there's a queue of Kiwis and other people in front of them. I'm just saying that we need to probably have a look, particularly is there a tailored solution just for that group in Queenstown? Is there something we can do to aid them, I guess?
It's kind of a statement piece, right? Too, like, hey, come to New Zealand, we're so warm and welcoming, and hey, we turned to shit, but now you're on your own. Peace. And they're like, what the fuck? Like, not that they expect rights, but it'd be kind of the good bastard thing to do, right? Like, I see the point. Because also, if you long tail it out, you're going to be screwed in a couple of years if all that low churn, high retention talent pisses off, and then you're stuck with the nuts and bolts in and out fly-by-nighters, which actually cost the business more for the upskill and all the rest of it, right? So it's actually a risk back to the economy by not addressing something with care, right?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully even by Christmas we might see, an uptake. And, I don't know what the percentages of foreign workers in Queenstown, but it'll be significant. It might even be the case at 50% capacity. We can't cater to everyone's needs, which would just be a tragedy, I think.
Yeah. When you look at has there been a single thing in tourism that you felt has been broken for a while and now it's been exposed through this? Like, is there, in lots of other businesses, like, it's been shit. People talking about physical servers that have been locked up with data that they can't get because they can't get access. There's been just a array of big gaping holes in businesses which have been kind of exposed through this, right? Has there been anything in the tourism side that you have seen this is really, really exposed through this, for good or for bad?
Look, I think I don't see anything bad, but I think what's been good is that because we're a seasonal business, I think our flexibility has really helped us. I think tourism understands that seasonality, so that's probably played into our favour a little bit. I think because the people in tourism are, they're battle hardened, and I think they've been reasonably tolerant of the situation. In our own instance, with 550 employees, we haven't had one voice of dissent. Everyone seems to understand the situation. So I think credit's got to go to them for their intelligence. They understand the market. They're streetwise. Yeah. I attended a meeting last week in Rotorua where I met with all of our employees, and they were going through their last day of the restructuring. We met in separate groups, obviously over a period of the day, and look, the questions they were asking. I mean, it was I was shocked. They were really passionate about things like the foreign minister's comments around China. There were comments around rescue packages for tourism, questions around why the CEO of local councils hadn't taken pay cuts.
They don't want to do that.
No. So,
the batch beamer and the whatever. Yeah, you don't mess with that.
People are well informed. They understand the politics, and if anyone thinks that the general population don't get that, they do. So, I think that's probably the real positive, Robert, out of all that is, that the industry and especially our people have continued to be passionate and understanding, and look, they're optimistic too.
And unified, right? It's very clear. It's that as a collective, it's been very much like, we are here as a team together to get through. Opposed to, it's very clear. You go to CNN or a bunch of these other things, and you can see in a lot of other places around the world there is the masses are on different pages. Let's just say.
Yeah, that's right. And
I'm talking about America, Liz. I'm talking about America.
Yeah, and the UK to some degree.
Yeah,
it's funny you mentioned. I was thinking the same thing this morning. I think we've been lucky in New Zealand that we've been pretty unified. I think we all appreciate the great job, not only just the government, but I think government officials, and they probably haven't had the credit they deserve. But how everyone managed that crisis on our behalf, I think it's great. But I think we'll look back and say, look, the health crisis was 2 months. but the financial crisis was 2 years. And so that's the concern, is that, we're actually going through the most difficult bit now. And, of course, I do hope the government or future governments get this right. But I would hate to think that our almost 400,000 people across tourism and direct, I would hope that some of their frustration doesn't turn to anger. And, that's probably a concern, that, that they get the care and attention they need, because we wouldn't want to see that, because then you might see some fragmentation. We don't want them.
Well, I think from when the budget had come out 2 weeks ago, or whatever, basically the two bitches were flipping tourism got smoked and small business got screwed. And so you kind of seen like, what, isn't this a big part of it? Like, obviously they're trying to shift the dynamics of the economy or whatever. Within the tourism circle, speaking, what was the mood when that budget came out with those in the tourism space for how, I guess, small business tourism, but we'll keep with tourism to start with, because small business is a different kettle of fish. But what was the vibe when how did tourism see the budget? Were they like, stuff this? Or was it like, I can understand, kinda? Like, what did, not you hypothetically, but let's say hypothetically your friends, what did they ring you up and tell you that their thoughts were?
Well, I'm going to be polite, because I realise this is a public forum and you've got a wide following. I guess, though, Robert, and I do want to say the right thing. You know what we quickly determined?
Your friends that rung you, not you, but your friends. Yeah.
What we quickly
acquaintances.
Is that we could get caught up with all the negative, and what was really vital was just now to get on with it. It was pretty clear we have been, the signal kind of was, you're on your own. And so I think we got that message pretty clearly. And, and then you have a choice personally, do you think about the negative or you think about the positive? Now, everyone's situation is different. And obviously if your business is in crisis, then you're going to have a different view. But what our company decided is we sat down, and I spoke to our owner and got his view on things. And we just decided we were going to be positive. We were going to make some dates about reopening hotels. Not that we had business on the books or anything, but we were just going to put a stake in the ground. We were going to
statement, it's like, yep.
And we were going to continue with the support of our shareholders. We went back to them with the varying developments we had and said, are you still keen to proceed? And everyone, we talked them through that, obviously, made some good sort of, I guess, clear financial expectations for them. And they were still on board. So we've decided we're just going to get on with it. And we're going to be positive and we're going to move forward. I think the danger for the industry is that if we get too caught up in that negative stuff, become too critical of the government, it's probably not going to be helpful. Having said that, we do need to make sure we're listened to and our concerns are addressed. Absolutely. We shouldn't shy away from that, because we've got a contribution to make. But at the same time, we're pretty keen to kind of put that somewhat behind us.
Yeah. And, I think when it's a clear statement of, we need the nation to potentially start to go in a different direction for reliance for GDP or dollars or whatever. It kind of, a lot of my friends in it were just like, dude, they're kind of leaving us out in the cold here. It's like, they don't actually want to support us, blah, blah. This is the equivalent of a couple of days bullshit. But, and they just like because obviously I'm, friends with crew, especially within the tourism space. And then I was kind of, well, if you're out to the cold and you go yourself, but there's billions that are going, there's the Trans-Tasman there's a whole bunch more to it. When you kind of see maybe just this next little phase, how do you fill the rooms back up? Like has there been other ideas of like, pop-up Airbnbs or bits? I mean, I don't know, like what type of ideas are people thinking about when it comes to the hotels and stuff around trying to get more people in rooms? Like what are some of the options with how that sort of plays up?
Yeah, we're certainly thinking laterally. We've got a couple of irons in the fire which look really promising around some different ideas. So, I don't want to share those, but most businesses will be doing the same thing. What can we do? Obviously, as I was sort of saying before, I think the recovery will come in stages. Domestic tourism, I think we'll see a little uptake in that. It might be a bit of a spike, but nonetheless, it's welcomed. then
And with
I
the
think,
Anzac bubble too, right? When that
yeah,
is
that
that
looks, after today's announcements, it kind of looks like that's going to happen sooner. I was sort of thinking that might be last quarter, but they may actually come a bit sooner, which would be great. That will help. And then I think by the end of the year, all going well, there'll be some confidence around conferencing and corporate travel. I took my first flight yesterday, and the plane
was
was
it
reasonably
weird?
weird. Yeah.
Face mask, like the what was the vibe?
No, it was normal, except it's just weird driving in, and I don't want to sound elitist, but it's just weird driving into Kuru parking and finding that the whole car park is completely empty.
Yeah,
Because it's just
no
weird.
business travel. Yeah,
Yeah, there's no one at the airport at all. There's more airport workers than airport people. But
oh
there were people
trip.
traveling. Yeah, and then I guess it was a little bit surprising to go to aviation security and find that the queue was still 25 minutes to get through. Um,
Maybe they
that
downsized. They got Cheryl out there just with this one wand, like safe,
yeah,
safe.
I've obviously adjusted their manning levels. And then but the plane trip was fine. There's just a bit of you just got to be a little bit patient. Loading and unloading takes a little bit more time, but everything was fine. I flew Air New Zealand. The service was excellent as usual. Everybody in the airport's great. But it was a bit of a weird experience. But interesting how once I took a return trip. Once I landed, you're just back in the mode, and
Yeah,
it doesn't take much. And I think people are a little bit like that around the country, that they're kind of reluctant at that first step. But once you do, you just fall back into old habits. So I'm kind of hopeful that in the hotel space that corporate travel and that conferencing will start to re-emerge. In fact, I was talking to one of our managers yesterday in one of our hotels. They had 16 conference inquiries the day before. I checked out of the hotel about 7:30 in the morning. They already had 10 more in their inbox. So,
nice.
that was really good sign. Whereas the previous week there was nothing. So,
But there's going to be that escapism pop too, right? Because when you've been cooped up for that long, and that you can start to see freedom, it's like, cool. Where do we go? What are we going to do? Obviously, Tourism New Zealand's got this. Got to try and drive more locally and stuff. That I definitely get that.
A lot of mums and dads actually enjoy going away for a conference overnight or a business trip.
Yeah, kids away. Cocktail hour. I get it. So at the moment, I was just all the international. So are you on the list with the government for people that come back into the country to quarantine for 2 weeks? You were saying, and is that just in Auckland? Is it?
Yes, we've got a quarantine hotel in Christchurch. The Novotel at Christchurch Airport was a quarantine hotel. It's no longer required. So we've been at the sharp end of that. And then in Christchurch and Auckland, two of our Sudimas were managed isolation facilities. The Auckland Hotel is still a managed isolation facility. I don't believe there's currently any more needs for these facilities in Christchurch. I think the Auckland Hotel, I think, is one of the 12 or 13 hotels in Auckland that are still doing that. We understand that will continue for some time. So that's been, it's been an interesting challenge.
Are there a lot of people that are still coming through? Because obviously I'm in the States at the moment, and when I come back across, it's going to be 2 weeks sort of chilling. But like, what's the vibe of people that are in there? Are they just kind of like all just kind of hanging out waiting? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, there are all sorts, Robert. I mean, not everyone that crosses the border is a model citizen. I'm not suggesting you are, but
I'm not.
They are housed. And then you have elderly, you have people with accessible needs, you have people with special diets, you have different cultures, and you have people who wouldn't typically stay in a hotel. And then, of course, you have people who have, mental health challenges.
True, yeah.
You have families. There's just all sorts. So,
what a dynamic! It's a crazy dynamic.
Yeah, and it keeps the hotel staff really busy. But the government's got a good support structure around those hotels. And I know there is some frustration in the media recently. There's been a few stories of some clients in other hotels struggling. I'm pleased to say, touch wood, in our hotels we haven't had any issues like that. We've really taken an approach of care and attention. I had these discussions about different types of people, and not everyone's used to a hotel. In fact, we had a lot of lovely letters around the care. So, it's but it's certainly interesting. However, we're grateful for the business.
Yeah,
Um,
true. Well, the government's
um,
paying as well, right? Like that's kind of
yeah,
there was
yeah,
these blogs I was seeing of these tourists that were putting up the Instagram account of just like all this amazing food that they were getting because obviously they're probably not used to hotels, and it's
that's
just kind
right.
of all popping off. I'm like, this is flipping great. Yeah, it was just the dynamics of all this are super weird. I know you're a very busy man, but before we go, I want to just ask, like, when in the next by Christmas, what will success look like for you and your business?
Yeah. So success will be that obviously we're starting to see revenues and profits, potentially profits, get to a point where we're sustainable. Yeah, I guess by Christmas, if we're sort of in a cash neutral position, I guess that would be a win. Followed quickly on behind that, Robert, would be that many of our current employees are on reduced hours and reduced salaries. In fact, everyone is. There's no one in the company who's not taken a pay cut, voluntary one, I would add. So my priority would be to get them back up to full hours and full pay. Um, and then, the most exciting bit for us would be to be re-employing people. How cool would that be?
Yeah.
Um, in
Yep.
fact, I had this hotel I referred to earlier that was getting conference bookings yesterday. I had said to the hotel manager, call the conference manager who we had placed on extended leave and have her back. What a great call that will be to say, look, can you come back
Yeah.
Monday? All is forgiven. We need you. And we've taken the approach, interesting enough, with those conversations about saying, will you have us back? We don't want for a moment to say to people, your job's there, you should be grateful. Because
Yeah.
I fully accept that there'll be some trust and some faith has been broken through this process. So we're going to take that approach and say, look, if you'll have us back, we'll absolutely welcome you back. So by Christmas, they'd be making those sort of calls to be re-employing people would be fantastic.
I love that
Yeah,
change in language. It's a tone. It's an energy shift. It's more empathy driven. It's leading with love. It's a cool way to think about it, and it would probably change the energy of staff with trust back to the business by approaching it that way. So
yeah.
it's a smart
I
play.
actually think that there's going to be a whole sort of cottage industry. I mean, I know these businesses exist, but I think the opportunity for small businesses, especially, to be focusing their services around team building is going to be important because when you restructure companies, that faith and trust gets broken. But probably most of them will come back into employment. And I
Mm.
think there's a real sort of opportunity for us to go about now. And a company, as our own company is a good example, we will go about now trying to go through team building exercises and talk about these things. And there'll be slightly different things. I think they'll probably be deeper. The conversations will be more meaningful, and they'll be about trying to put this behind us in a positive way, but not ignoring it. You can't suddenly re-employ all these people and then begin to celebrate things like nothing's happened. Something has
Yeah, yeah.
broken, and
Don't
you
worry
probably
about it. Sweet. Yeah.
yeah. So I think we need to pause on those and
No,
just
I get it.
recover those conversations.
Totally get it. Les, really appreciate your time, man. I know you're super tapped, so it's great insights and stuff, and just even just on the way you're approaching and how it's all rolling out. The view makes sense, and I'm wishing nothing but the best, man. And continue the LinkedIn events; they are brilliant.
No, I'm not going to do that. I've had so much
Do it.
media attention, Robert. I've had calls from all around the world. I've had interviews from all around the world, and I've been lucky enough to be on forums like yourself. So, although I appreciate all that, I want
Yeah.
to go back to
Stick to the knitting.
stick to the knitting and just try and be the best example I can for our teams. But look, it's been an interesting experience. I've had complete strangers call me up and ask for my advice or just talk, business people.
Mm.
So that's been humbling. But I'm pretty keen to, like us all, I mean, we all want things to go back to normal, I guess, but I fully accept they won't.
Yeah, to a new normal. Appreciate your time, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Cheers, Rob.
Love your work. Cheers, mate.
Okay.
Bye. Les Morgan. There you go. COO, Sudima. What a good bastard. Never met him before. Good banter. Good wit. It'd be funny after a few beers. I can arrange that when I'm back. Um, Mate, I'm just really intrigued. Like when you fly back. So I'm in the States at the moment. When I fly back to New Zealand, what's it going to be like? Like, what other creatures and characters are going to be on the flight with you on the way home that you're going to have to hang out with for 2 weeks? Man, it's going to be funny. I don't know if it's funny or it'll be an experience. But hey, I'll have my camera with me to document. Actually, I'll quickly show you a few little new accessories that I've put on this bad boy. Got a little handle at the top. Happy with that. Little thing at the bottom. Happy with that. Little mic. Little holder. This could be stuck at Sudima for 2 weeks. I could blog it. It'll be fun. All right, team. Enjoy the rest of the day, and I'll talk to you. I'll be hearing from you hopefully soon. See you soon, team. Peace.